accessibility testing techniques. So starting with checklists, we have Section 508, federal law, we have WCAG, the international guidelines, the AODA from Canada is now actually getting more companies to implement accessibility since it is legally required. And I have links to WebAIM's WCAG checklist. WebAIM is how I got my start in accessibility before I even knew how to use a screen reader. Sure. The URL, guys, is pauljadam.com/weba11y testing. And I'll have it linked on my website, and somebody can post it on Twitter as well. Now, this is my checklist that I use for myself. When I did Section 508, there's a lot more interpretation in 508, so I really like WCAG because it's very specific. You have all these success criteria. And most of our clients only want level AA, so I made this with jQuery just for myself so I could check things off if I wanted to as I go. Mostly it's just reminders for me, and they link to each of the understanding success criteria, the W3C. So you really have to read through all these to really understand WCAG and accessibility. And also, if you're doing government work, I have a link to the Section 508 BPAT. So the BPAT will basically be your checklist. If you have software and you want the federal government to purchase it, you need to pass all the requirements in the BPAT. So automated testing is what I'm going to talk about first. And of course, DQ has a product called WorldSpace and FireEyes. WorldSpace is a server-side component to FireEyes. So you can use it for large-scale automated accessibility scanning and violation tracking. And then FireEyes is totally free. You just need to sign up with your email so you can sign in. And so the benefits of automated scanning and tracking service like WorldSpace. You can track accessibility issues page by page in FireEyes in your Firefox Firebug extension. You go to a page, you hit the Now button, finds all the issues. You can upload them to WorldSpace where it can be tracked and assigned to other employees as well, other coworkers. FireEyes can also record use case scripts, so you don't have to manually click on all the buttons, type in login information to go through a process to do a test. And as you go through, FireEyes can log all the issues, accessibility issues on each page. Issues can be assigned to different users on the team, so they're responsible to fix them and then change the status to fix. Previously uploaded issues can then be re-downloaded into the FireEyes extension. So someone can upload the issues, another team member can download them, mark them as fixed, inspect them in Firebug itself. The large-scale sites can be spidered from WorldSpace server automatically without needing a human to go visit each page. You can even have non-technical users use FireEyes to do a simple scan. Maybe they don't understand the results, but their job is just to upload them and assign them to whoever can fix them. In the dashboard on WorldSpace server can help management folks see a status of issues, progress through accessibility over time. They have charts and graphs. And we have help documentation built into the extension and the website to explain the accessibility problem so you can understand how to fix it. And you can set the different levels of testing you want to do. WCAG, you can do level A only, AA, or just Section 508. So WorldSpace is the enterprise solution. If you have hundreds of thousands of pages to scan, it's just not possible to do that with a limited accessibility team. You need an automated solution at this point. So I have some screenshots of FireEyes in action. This is the W3C's bad demo, before and after demo. So I went to FireEyes and hit the Now button here. And it found 76 accessibility issues on this page. This is the bad example, so that is accurate. And then I uploaded these issues in a WorldSpace, and you can see the same issues there. So I have some demo sites that we can use for accessibility testing to see what is wrong with them. Let's try one. So let me open this new tab. So basically what you do is you just right click and hit inspect element with Firebug. At least this is the way I go about it. There's other ways to get to FireEyes. You have your tabs, so that FireEyes will be added as a tab in Firebug. And the easiest thing to do is just hit the now button on the page you want to scan. It takes a little while, especially if there's tons of issues. So it says that there are 76 issues on this page. My screen's kind of small, so it's hard to see everything here. I have tons of accessibility testing toolbars. Okay, so you'll see an issue like HTML links or elements that act as links must have a visible name. Basically, they need a text alternative, an accessible name. So you can read the details, and it'll explain the problem to you. So in just looking at this code, I see an anchor with an href, but I see no accessible name. There's no link text. And it'll tell you which success criterion this matches up with. You can also hit inspect, and it'll take you into the Firebug code inspection panel. You can also highlight it. If you highlight it, it shows you exactly on the page where it is. It's these little dots for a slideshow. Has no accessible name. This is a common problem in slideshow. Okay. Let's see, what else can I show in FireEyes? Now it's trying to load these issues back in. What you would do then would be to upload them. My resolution is so small here though. Here's the upload button. So you can upload the issues and you give them a label like, you know, the about page, or put a date on it, a unique identifier so you can track these issues later. After you upload them, you want to clear the issues in FireEyes usually so that you can move on to another page to test. So sometimes you can go through page by page and analyze. You can remove issues if you think it's a false positive, or you're not going to fix that particular issue. You can delete 10 or 20, then upload the other 40 if those are the only ones that you actually want to track. We also have the color contrast analyzer built into FireEyes. It will test your HTML colors to make sure that they pass the WCAG requirements. So poor visibility between text and background colors. You can highlight it and see, okay, this blue is too light. We also have ARIA analysis. This will tell you if you've used ARIA incorrectly according to the spec. So here's an error. It says an element has an ARIA role that requires a descendant with a specified role. So there's a parent element, and it's saying you're missing, you maybe have a menu bar, but you have no menu items or something like that. And that's pretty much what ARIA scanning does. The simulate assistive technology, it's kind of trying to give you a preview of what a screen reader experience would be. So let's say you just want to see what the headings are in the document, you can do that as well. And it says heading level 1, destination Mars. These are all your headings on the site. And it's trying to simulate how a screen reader would speak this out loud. And it's reading the roles, heading level 3, and it's a length role as well, and then the accessible name. Okay, so I think that's enough of FireEyes. And just remember, if you're a small web shop or freelancer, FireEyes is free. So the next thing would be user, agent, and assistive technology testing. After automated, maybe you want to do tests in screen readers. And the other thing to keep in mind is browser combinations. Not all combinations of browsers and assistive technology work well together. Some simply fail to work together well at all. So the combinations you want to test in would be Internet Explorer and JAWS, Firefox and NVDA, Safari and VoiceOver, mobile Safari and iOS VoiceOver, and on Android, Firefox is the most accessible browser. And here's the warning. Don't test NVDA with Internet Explorer and expect good results, because you won't get them. That's a fail waiting to happen. NVDA is open source. Internet Explorer is not open source. The guys who created NVDA have talked about how all the hacks and workarounds they have to do to make it work well with Internet Explorer. So JAWS, IE, both closed source, they work together well. Keep that in mind. And the other thing to remember is that not all blind people are totally blind. You have low vision users who may possibly use a screen reader and a screen magnifier at the same time. A lot of people use JAWS and zoom text at the same time. And screen magnifiers will help you find problems in your page layout or your UI placement. So, you have an input over here, but the label is way over here. And when you're zoomed in, you can't see it at all. So that'll show you should probably top align your labels. Or if you have, buttons that are just really far spaced out apart. So keep that in mind. Another thing you can do is HTML code validation. This will only get you so far finding accessibility issues because it's not looking at the manipulated DOM output. It's only looking at your source code, which is always going to be different than what is displayed in the browser. And I have a link to the validator.nu, the HTML5 validator. So in this screenshot, I pasted some code from a site that had some ARIA. Because for me, this has been very useful to find problems with ARIA and how it's been implemented. And it says that only elements with a role of tab or presentation can be children of a role of a tab list. So they were trying to create a tab widget. Now, if you have a tab list, the children of that parent tab list have to either be role tab or role presentation. And this is stuff that most developers new to ARIA miss because they don't really understand how to implement ARIA or they haven't tested in a screen reader much. Most people know ARIA is good for accessibility, so that I want to put ARIA in everything and bam, I'm accessible. But you have to be careful how you implement it. So now onto the browser extensions for accessibility testing. And I use a lot of different accessibility testing tools. They all work good in different situations. Jim Thatcher's Favorites. This is a Firefox toolbar. The internet did die. It's a toolbar, but also a bookmarklet. I have it up here. So we can do things like headings. It says I have 39 headings. And it will outline this heading. See H1, H3, H3 here. Form labels. Okay. 21 errors on 20 form controls. And I like Jim Thatcher's Favorites a lot for taking screenshots for web accessibility reports. Most people are visual, and when they see that error message on the screenshot, they understand it a lot more. so not everybody really understands how screen readers work. Let me refresh this page to get rid of that junk. You can do images, and it'll pull up all the errors in your alt value, or at least show you the alt values and tell you if there's an error. Tables, it'll tell you if you have a table, if you have the table headers or not. Does iframes as well, tell you if you have accessible names for your iframes. And also the ARIA will inject some text to show you where ARIA is being used in the page. As pop up here, ARIA autocomplete. Okay, let's see what I got next. Wave toolbar. So this is Jared's product here. And this is what most people probably got started out in accessibility with. I know I did. You just hit the errors button and it says there's 29 errors and highlights some semantic elements, H3s, highlights the errors as well. You hover over them. This is also good for screenshots for people so they can see visually where the errors are on their page. Sometimes when you do this, you want to disable the styles because it makes it easier to see some of the accessibility violations. So all the other junk on the site kind of gets out of the way. You can reset the page back to normal. Juicy Studio accessibility toolbar. I like it for the table inspector. Is really my favorite thing about it. There's no tables on this page. Maybe this is Accessibility University before and after demo. It has a table, yeah. Okay, maybe this is supposed to be a data table. Let me look at the accessible version. And here, it's showing summary attribute and heading, headings. This is a complex data table, so it's using the headers attribute. And it's showing that the headers is pointing to 3 different ID references. Okay, Firebug, FireEyes. Of course, you have to inspect your code to really find the problem. So right-clicking and hit Inspect Element to actually see the DOM output. Headings map is a way to see a visual output of the headings and their levels. You can also navigate by headings with the mouse that way. The Open Ajax accessibility extension. This one's kind of newer. It's still kind of in beta or alpha. But, you know, it's nice to go through a lot of different tools just to make sure you didn't miss something. It says there's 78 violations on this page, and you can highlight the elements with it. They're off screen. So here, these radio buttons are missing a field set. That's the error it's telling us. Now this one does have best practices as well as violations built into it. So sometimes your accessibility tools will tell you there's an error, but it may not be a specific WCAG violation or Section 508. And you have to learn to tell the difference between those. Web Developer Toolbar, of course. Probably heard of that one. Mostly for web design, but it has other information, like you can display alt attributes with it. You can also display title attributes. This is the only one I think I know of that displays title attributes, which can cause problems depending on how they're used.
This is also a very handy tool for clearing cache in Firefox.
Okay, cool. Clear cache in Firefox. Nice. Now the Web Developer extension is also available for Chrome. I don't think the features are as robust. And you see I have all these toolbars in my Firefox. I don't really use Firefox for browsing anymore. I've switched to Safari and Chrome, but it used to be the top dog. But it's still the best for accessibility testing. And with NVDA on Windows, it is the most accessible browser. Since I'm a Mac user, I stick to Safari. DOM Inspector, I've not really used that, but I heard it mentioned yesterday and checked it out and linked to it. Chrome, you don't have many choices with Chrome, but you do have the Chrome Accessibility Developer Tools extension, which is fairly new and made by Google. And it lets you do accessibility audits built into the Inspect Element Developer Tools. So let's see here. Drag this to Chrome. I use Chrome Canary. Chrome Canary is the latest developer version of Chrome. And it's, it's just, I like that better. And it has, you don't have to do things like enable certain flags to get these extensions to work. So if I hit right click and inspect element, we got my text zoomed in. And then once you install that extension, you have an audits tab, select accessibility, and then run an audit. And it will tell you some errors. So severe error here. ARIA stating property values must be valid. Controls must have labels. And it's also nice to have some documentation linked directly there, so you can see their audit rules. And it's good because it gives you good code, and it'll give you bad code as well. It explains the thinking behind these violations. It says warning for images with all. Some warnings are actually failures. And also, it will do color contrast. And as you hover over the elements, it displays them on the screen. Internet Explorer has the Web Accessibility Toolbar for the Pasiela group. I don't really use it anymore because I don't use IE unless I'm forced to. But it does have a viewer, which is a good accessibility API tester, and the color contrast analyzer built in to the toolbar. And I use a color contrast analyzer all the time. A viewer I don't, because again it's a PC only Windows product. If y'all would make one for Mac, that'd be cool. And then on Safari, there's nothing really on Safari other than JavaScript bookmarklets, like Jim Thatcher's favorites. Unless anybody else knows of something on Safari for accessibility testing, please let me know. So the JavaScript bookmarklets. These are great because they work anywhere JavaScript is supported, including an iPhone, iPad, Android. So you can do accessibility testing on your iPad, and you can create reports, no computer needed. And here I run Jim Thatcher's ARIA bookmarklet on Google, and it displays attributes. So, this has an ARIA label, I'm feeling lucky. I roll a button. HTML code sniffer is another one that is fairly new, very interesting product here. It's great because when I'm on a system where I'm really restricted and I can't install anything, like some clients, very locked down computer systems, you can still install JavaScript bookmarklets pretty much anywhere, Internet Explorer, whatever. And you can set the levels of standards you want to test for, and it just pulls out a report. It even works on an iPad as well. Okay, and of course, code inspection. Honestly, you don't need any of these testing tools if you understand the code and you know it's incorrect. You just need to inspect the elements and say, okay, it's missing an accessible name, it's missing a role, it's missing a state. And this is the only way you're going to see the true DOM output. This is built into all modern browsers, even IE by now. So, you know, the source code is irrelevant. It's the DOM. That's the only thing that matters in the modern web. Also, the mobile Safari has a web inspector. You have to have Safari, but you can connect your iPhone to your Mac, visit a page on the iPhone, and then inspect the elements from your Mac. And this is really cool when you see like a bug, and just on the iPhone, there's no way to look at that code on the iPhone unless you connect it to the mobile Safari web inspector. And you can modify the code in inspect element and then run VoiceOver on the iPhone, and you can fix the problem. You can test out a fix and then say, okay, I know we need to add ARIA dash hidden equals true to hide this jump. There also is some standalone accessibility testing applications, not a lot, but for Windows. A viewer, accessibility viewer. When I worked for state government, I used to use this one a lot, since I didn't have a Mac. And it'll show you the accessibility API output, the MSAA, ARIA, all of that. And one thing I also like a lot is that you can highlight the element that you're focused on in red, because a lot of times people disable focus indicators, and as you tab their page, you really have no idea what you're focused on. But with this red outline, that makes it easy. If anybody knows of any other standalone accessibility testing applications, let me know. Color contrast and color blindness. There's things to test with that. My favorite is the color contrast analyzer by the Paciello group, because they have a Mac app, and you can use it to test images. Most contrast analyzers look at your HTML code or maybe CSS values to do the testing, but they can't test the images. You have to manually pick each bit and piece of the image. So this is the color contrast analyzer. And I would pick my foreground color. Let's see, this white. And I would pick my background color. That's great. Switch it to luminosity. Okay, it passes, obviously. But you can also adjust it. Let's say you have a light blue or something like that, and you're like, oh, this almost passes or this almost fails. You can adjust it until you reach the pass. You're like, okay, this is the value I need to pass. And depending on what level you want, A or AAA, and if it's large text or not. Because a large text, bolded large text, does not need as much contrast as thin, small text. And I use this to take screenshots as well, put into accessibility reports. So most people don't really understand contrast requirements. Color Oracle is a color blindness simulator. Let's see if they have some pictures here. Okay. So it puts a toolbar thing at the top of your menu, and you can simulate different types of color blindness. So I've recently used this for map. For map pins, every single pin on the map was a circle, but the circles were a different color to indicate a different meaning. So I ran a simulator, and it made all the circles look like they're the same color. So just to show the developers that if you're colorblind, you can't really tell which circle goes with what thing. And it was great because they changed it to shapes. So instead of circles, we have a square, a diamond, a triangle. So no matter what color it is, you know what it does. And WebAIM has a color contrast checker, which you'll see a lot of these on the web. It's just, paste in a hex value, and it'll tell you if it passes or not. This is great if you're in a lockdown environment where you can't install applications. FireEyes does contrast, and Chrome Accessibility Tool does contrast testing. There's also accessibility API inspectors. I don't use these a lot. They're pretty technical, so you really have to have a good understanding of accessibility APIs. But OS 10 has Accessibility Inspector. And what you do is you hover your cursor over the element you want to inspect. And I hovered it over the DQ logo, and it shows my role is an AX image. And it shows my accessible name for that logo here. It says DQ logo. So for a more complex widget, you'd see a lot more information. There's Windows API inspectors that come with the Microsoft SDKs. And in the iOS simulator, if you do iPhone development with Xcode, there's a iOS accessibility inspector built in. So custom user interface elements need a name, role, state, value. And this is how you test for them, or how I test for them. Set focus to every UI element. Make sure an accessible name is spoken. Make sure a role is spoken, like role equals button, menu item. Make sure the value is spoken if it's adjustable, like a slider. 50%, adjust it. Is it 70% now? Checkbox, is it checked? Is it unchecked? Make sure the state is spoken. Usually, state is never indicated on web pages. So you'll see something's expanded or collapsed or disabled or dimmed, but that's only visually communicated. It's not communicated non-visually. So, you have ARIA expanded, ARIA pressed, ARIA selected, and make sure you can activate that UI element with your keyboard. So interactive and dynamic widgets. You can't test these with automated tools because they're not going to click on the modal, go into the modal, tap around the modal, mess with your mega menu. You're going to have to do that yourself. First thing you want to do is hover your mouse over every single little thing on the page. And the only thing I'm noticing now is that on hover, my style changes. But a lot of times you'll see a popover or tooltip appear. But if you tab through the page, you'll miss that because it does not appear on focus. Tab through everything with the keyboard. Make sure you can activate it. And screen reader and keyboard accessibility are not the same. So you'll want to do it without a screen reader. Because sometimes when you have a screen reader turned on and you press enter on an element, it will activate it because the screen reader is maybe sending a click event. But if you turn that screen reader off and then try to activate it, it fails. So that there's a big difference there.
Question on that.
Yes?
So, is it safe to say that we're not always trying to achieve the same screen reader and keyboard at the same time? Right?
Yeah.
It's just impossible sometimes.
Yeah, they're just not the same thing. You want to do keyboard testing by itself with no screen reader. Yeah, because there's probably a lot more people maybe who use keyboard only than even use screen readers. That's a much bigger audience. Power users, other people. So yeah, keep them separate. So modal and non-modals, you can't test these with automated tools either. Using the keyboard only, not necessarily with a screen reader. You probably want to do both. Set focus to the element that opens the modal. Activate it. Make sure your focus goes into the modal. Most of the time the focus goes to the bottom of the page or to the top of the page, but it never goes into the modal because nobody uses websites with a keyboard. They just click on it and say, oh, it appeared, it's good. This always fails usually. Then once you're inside the modal, cycle through all the elements in the dialog, tab through everything. And your focus should be trapped within the modal. That's what a modal dialog is. You cannot go interact with anything else. If it's a non-modal, then you can interact with the rest of the web page. Close the dialog with the close button, usually an X that's unlabeled, or the escape key, or both. Escape key is best practice. It's not really a violation failure, but it's a standard convention on the web. You hit escape to close modals, so you want to follow that. Now when it's closed, focus must be sent back to the element that activated the modal. This is another thing everybody misses. The focus usually goes to the top of the DOM or the bottom of the DOM. User loses their place, and they have to start all over. Make sure every button in the dialog has a good accessible name. X is not a good accessible name for a close button. Now you could just apply an ARIA label that says close and have a roll of button. So let's test a few. This is called the Incredible Accessible Mobile Dialog window. If I press enter, it set focus to the container. Now as I tab through, I'm trapped inside it. And when I hit escape, my focus went back. Let's try that with a screen reader.
Accessible modal window. View the modal window button has keyboard focus.
Okay.
Registration form beginning of dialog window. It begins with a heading 1 column.
Now they went overboard with all this information explaining that I'm in a modal. I don't really need to hear that. I don't think.
First name, edit text, even submit, can link image, close the registration form.
And that's verbose. All I need to say is close button.
View the modal window button. Voiceover off.
Okay. That's one. We can try the jQuery UI dialog as well. It's actually pretty much accessible. Basic modal form. Okay, so for one like this modal form here.
Voiceover on Safari. Create the user button.
Okay, press enter.
Create new user with 5 items. Dialog name, edit text.
So my focus was sent to the first focusable item, or the first input within the dialog, which is good. And then I can tab through.
Email, password, create, cancel, close button.
This is a good dialog. I'm trapped in.
Create new user
And
button.
when I hit escape, back where I came from. So jQuery did a great job here.
Well, I think the only thing that the jQuery UI one doesn't do is actually set focus automatically back to the element that opened it. You have to add that into the close
Okay.
event function, essentially. The other thing to test with these is shift tab navigating. A lot of times people will trap focus, make sure it works this way, but when you do shift tab, you end up back in the underlying document. So you need to test both of those.
Good point, thanks. Yes?
Wouldn't you also miss the all forms are required instruction text at the beginning if it's force focused to the first form?
Yeah, you would. I would put ARIA required. I put ARIA required on every required field. That's just what I do. No, this is name, email, and password. You kind of know that those are required. They're kind of implied. So there's some things to consider there.
What's the rule on, like, the title of the modal?
Well,
For instance, sometimes it's not displayed to visual users, and it's just, there's a modal. But
yeah,
should the screen reader announce some kind of title?
yes. And for visual users, you should have a title for usability. You can give a modal dialog. You can do. You can give it an ARIA label if you want. You can say ARIA labeled by and point to a heading within the modal. You can say ARIA described by and maybe point. You could point to that all fields are required in the described by part. But then when the focus is set on the container, it should speak the ARIA label or speak the described by to the user.
And sometimes twice that is also in text.
Yeah, that might happen. That's
I
okay.
made a modal that was like saying the title of the modal 3 times in a row. And I got a bug for that.
Yeah, that might be a little bit overkill. It's good if you have a heading to connect that as the title. using ARIA. That's going to be a lot smarter than doing an ARIA label plus another heading that repeats the same exact thing. Menu bars and mega menus. So you're going to need to test this once with a keyboard and with a keyboard plus screen reader. Set focus to the first item in the mega menu. Make sure a screen reader is alerted to the presence of a pop-up menu, like ARIA has pop-up equals true, or maybe the expanded or collapsed state could say collapsed. The submenus should be activated or activatable by either the down arrow, the space bar, the enter key, all three, two of them. The point is to mimic a native experience. So like, this is a menu bar, and I can use my right, left arrow keys, and I can use my down arrows to get through it. And I can hit escape to close it. If arrow key navigation does not work, and it usually doesn't, at least you need tab and shift tab. You need to tab through every item, and you need the state, expanded and collapsed. If the menu appears on hover, well, when you hover over, it drops down, then it should appear on focus when the user focuses on it. If it only appears on click, then the user should have to press enter to make it appear. Now, when they're focused on your main menu items and they press enter, you should not be loading a new page unless that's what you do when they click on it too. Usually you want the submenu to appear, or it appears and you send their focus into it. Now, screen reader users can easily bypass blocks of repeating content like a mega menu because they have quick navigation keys. They can do headings to get into the main content or landmarks. But keyboard users, they have no screen reader to use, so tab and shift tab or arrow keys is all they have. So if you have 100 items in your mega menu, you want them to be able to tab only through the main menu items at the top. You don't want to force them to go do every single little thing and go through 100 items to get through it, or that's going to be frustrating. At that point, you need a skip link to skip over it, but really using the arrow navigation will make that easier. Let's see, here's a good mega menu to test. But, okay. The Web Experience Toolkit, Canadian project.
Voiceover on intern blank. Web Experience WBT Collaborative Open Source Project blank. Home. List 3 items.
This is showing me like a mobile view. I guess this has been optimized for mobile.
Working examples.
Okay.
Voiceover off.
I think my resolution is so small, it thinks I'm on a mobile. So let's look at a different one. This one's a pretty simple one.
Voiceover about menu item, menu 4 items.
So it's a menu item, there's 4 items. Down arrow.
Menu item, menu 4 items, level 2.
So now I'm inside that, and I can hit down,
Menu item.
I can hit the right arrow.
Degree programs, menu item, menu 4 item. Under events, menu item, menu parking, menu
I
item.
can hit escape. And I don't know where I am now. Okay, right there.
You are currently on menu. Voiceover off.
I have a link to also Adobe's open source accessible mega menu on GitHub. They use it on adobe.com. Let's just show that real fast. Internet will cooperate. Oh, okay. Here we go. So I tab into their mega menu, and I can right arrow through it, and I can down arrow through each item. I can right arrow through the sub items. This is the big spot. So doing this really helps your users. And Adobe does not use a skip link. They don't need a skip link because they've done this mega menu. Okay, tabs, accordings, tooltips. Set focus to it. If it's, it should speak a role if it's a tab or indicate the expanded or collapsed state. When you activate it, either the focus should stay where it is, or it should be sent to the expanding item. Tooltips can be different. You can focus on a tooltip, and it could just speak the tooltip text automatically if you use an assertive live region, or the user could focus into the tooltip. It's kind of up to you. As long as the information is spoken in a good manner, it's fine. Focus should be logical and smart. Just keep that in mind. Okay. Forms of validation. It's my last slide. So focus on the first input. Make sure the label is spoken, if the label is visible, or another accessible name, ARIA label, title, visually hidden label. If input is required, make sure it indicates it's required. You know, ARIA required true, HTML5 required, or you can just put some text in the label that says required. If it has an input format, you know, like only 10 characters or zip code format, make sure that's spoken automatically to the screen reader, usually through ARIA described by or in the label. That text has to be programmatically associated to the input. Leave all the inputs blank and then hit submit. Error messages should appear. Now, a lot of times you hit submit and you hear nothing with the screen reader, it just goes blank, and the user will assume the form is broken. Because you need to send the error messages either need to be spoken automatically out loud using like ARIA live region or roll equals alert, or you need to send focus to the error messages. If it's a list of errors at the top, send focus to that list. If it's inline validation, send focus to the first item that has an error with that error associated, and it will be spoken automatically. Also, fill in junk information. If it says fill in 8 characters, put in 20. If it says numbers, put in letters. You have to try and fail it in all possible methods. Now, validation can be either client-side, JavaScript, HTML5 validation, or it could be server-side, PHP, JSP.NET. All methods are fine as long as the user is alerted to the errors. You can even use old-school JavaScript alerts, which work fine too, and they look good on the iPhone as well. I'll show you an example of a good form, just something I created as a demo.
Voice over on link, first name star, required edit text.
So I have ARIA required attribute. Also put a star there for a visual indication of required.
On text. Last name star, password star, required edit text.
Okay, now VoiceOver is going to wait and wait and wait.
You are currently on a text field inside of HTML content. To enter text in this field, type.
Now it tells me the help tag, which is the ARIA described by.
Special character.
You can also hit VO Shift H.
Eight digits, one uppercase, one number, one special character.
And that is to invoke the hint. VoiceOver on the Mac treats a title as a hint and ARIA described by as a hint. And it's spoken with a 7-second delay, which is adjustable by the user. But this is really strange that they would do this because so many people are using ARIA described by as input format instructions.
Email star,
Email.
submit but first name star, required input.
So I just sent focus to the first invalid input. I also placed ARIA dash invalid on the input. And the error messages are programmatically associated. So with that, I better quit because I'm out of time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Paul. So one question for you. So you just showed us like 300 ways of checking our website for accessibility problems. So let's say that you, just pull up the Mars commuter site just really quick. So let's say that you're given the task of analyzing this website. What do you do first? And, you know.
What do I do first? Well, you know, your tip that you gave me was hover over everything. Sometimes I forget to hover over something, like this here. I've missed these before because when you focus on it, it doesn't appear. Then I usually tab through it, but also I'll run some accessibility testing tools. I mean, there's just, it kind of just depends. A lot of times though, I just use VoiceOver on the Mac, on Safari, because I'm so fast in VoiceOver. I can navigate by elements very quickly. I can identify problems very fast that way.
Okay.